All right, so let's talk about the state of the LGBTQ plus community in Bulgaria. Specifically, how Bulgaria is following Florida. Some say they're following Russia, but this is specifically about propaganda in schools. So, yeah, this is definitely a don't say gay type of law. Russia bans the LGBTQ plus propaganda throughout the country, not just in schools. So, let's just get into today's article. A Russian-inspired law banning LGBTQ plus propaganda in Bulgarian schools has sparked indignation from rights groups in Europe who say the bill is a cloak and dagger attack against human rights in the European Union. I guess that means Bulgaria is part of the EU. So, again, they say it's a Russian-inspired law. I think it's more of a Florida-inspired law because Russia's law encompasses everything. Whereas Bulgaria is just targeting schools. Now, it's entirely possible that whoever wrote this, either A, Bulgaria was actually looking towards Russia, and the fact that it resembles more Florida is just a happy coincidence, or whoever wrote this article, being that this is Euronews, so European Union, it's possible that they're not even aware of what happened in Florida. Who knows? These groups are calling on the European Union to swiftly start infringement procedures for what they see as Sophia's breach of the values that bind the bloc's 27 member countries together. For those who are unaware, Sofia is the capital of Bulgaria. A European Commission spokesperson confirmed in a statement to Euronews that the Commissioner for Equality, Helena Dalli, had sent a letter to the Bulgarian Minister of Education and Science, Galin Tsokov, on August 13th asking for further information on the legislation. The Commission will analyze whether the legislation is aligned with EU law, the spokesperson added. The bill amends a previous education law and makes it illegal to promote ideas and views related to non-traditional sexual orientation and or the determination of gender identity or other than biological. Okay, so nobody is promoting anything. Realizing that people exist is not promoting them. It's just acknowledging people exist. Number 2, gender identity is not biological. Your biological sex is not a gender identity. It is your biological sex. The gender you identify as is completely different. It could coincide with your biological sex, or it doesn't have to. But your identity I identify as a woman. It has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I have a vagina. It just so happens that I was born a female. And I identify that way because, well, in my mind, I don't have gender dysphoria, so no reason for me to identify any other way. I can keep identifying as the sex I was born with. I identify my female sex with being a woman. It's really not hard. So, no, this bill already is hella stupid because they don't know how science works. All the more reason why lawmakers should stay the fuck out of scientific endeavors. Bulgarian lawmakers also adopted another amendment which defines non-traditional sexual orientation as different from the generally accepted and established notions of attraction between persons of the opposite sex. Okay. If, I hate to break this to you, but this is redundant. If it's non-traditional, then it's non-traditional. I mean, generally accepted, that and established notions. That just means traditional. So you're basically saying we're defining non-traditional as non-traditional. Seriously, do you know how language works? I mean, obviously this has been translated from Bulgarian, but still. Now, obviously they're implying that you choose to be gay. But, no, that's not how this works. I have mentioned this many times in my videos. I grew up around traditional sexual orientations. I've encountered heterosexuality. I've seen romantic heterosexual relationships all through my childhood, and yet I'm still asexual. So no, I did not choose that because that's what I was exposed to. That's what was promoted to me. Nope, that's not how this works. You feel the way you feel, and yes, it isn't traditional because it's, most people are heterosexual. That does not make those of us who aren't heterosexual to be lesser than or should be seen as freaks, because we might be freaks, but not for that reason. The legal changes were tabled by the far right and pro-Russian, Vazrazade, or Revival Party, which sits with the likes of Alternative for Germany, or the AfD, and the newly formed Europe of Sovereign Nations, ESN, group in the European Parliament. So, yay! Surprisingly, parties belonging to the political center ground backed the move. What? Backed the move of the critics or of Bulgaria? Including the European People's Party affiliated GERB Party, the Liberal DPS, and the Socialist BSP. Since it's surprisingly, I'm going to assume they're backing Bulgaria? The bill was overwhelmingly passed with 159 votes in favor, 22 against, and 12 abstentions, with Bulgaria's President Rumen Radev giving his seal of approval on Thursday, despite pleas from civil society for his veto. Bulgaria consistently ranks among the worst performers in the EU in upholding the rights of LGBTQ plus people and has failed to respond to a 2023 ruling by the European Court of Human Rights calling on it to legally recognize same-sex relationships. A country that's acknowledging that the LGBTQ plus community exists as worst performer? Shocking. I would never have guessed. Of course, considering Poland and Hungary exist, I'm surprised. Oh, among the worst. Not the worst. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Critics say it's a further setback for LGBTQ plus freedoms in Bulgaria and a frontal attack on the principles of human rights and human dignity as enshrined in EU law. NGO ILGA Europe has called for a firm response from Brussels and the EU's member states. With the law now set to take effect, it is crucial that the EU and its member states respond strongly, condemning the legislation and applying pressure on the Bulgarian government to reconsider its stance and mitigate the law's harmful effects. Belinda Deer, Senior Advocacy Officer at ILGA Europe, told Euronews. Well, considering that they hate the LGBTQ plus community, I don't think that they see this as harmful effects, because just like bigots anywhere else, they probably see the harm that this is being done to the LGBTQ plus community and the people in it as a plus, because what better way to deal with getting rid of people you don't like than to have them off themselves. So yeah, they probably don't see it as harmful at all. We're urging the European Commission to start infringement procedures because there's a clear breach here of EU law and EU treaties. Remy Bonney, Executive Director of rights groups Forbidden Colors, told Euronews, adding that children's right to access comprehensive, safe, and informative sex education is at stake. Exactly, which is why I'm more aligning this with Florida's Don't Say Gay law, because it is, that's basically what the Don't Say Gay law does. So, yeah. He also warns that it signals Bulgaria is prioritizing Russian values over European values, with a law clearly inspired by a 2013 Moscow bill banning gay propaganda in classrooms. Oh, maybe they started with classrooms too. I was under the impression that they've banned it everywhere. But maybe they did start with just classrooms. Okay. It's very clear that what Russia introduced in 2013 is what Bulgaria is introducing today. Bulgaria is following the Russian playbook of scapegoating LGBTI people, Bonnie said. And ironically, they seem to be claiming to be the bastions against Nazism. And guess what the Nazis did? So, yeah. Yeah, because that's why one of the many, many reasons Russia claimed that they invaded Ukraine, to bring down Nazism, because that's actually happening. Hungary was also accused of copy-pasting the Russian law in 2021 with its child protection law, curtailing the portrayal of LGBTQ plus people in schools. The bill aimed to limit children's exposure to material that promoted homosexuality, gender reassignment, and the LGBTQ plus community in classrooms and the media. And I already explained why that's bullshit. It saw Brussels launch legal action against Budapest, with 15 EU countries backing the case. To this day, the EU executive is withholding nearly 12 billion euros from Hungary's allocated share of cohesion funds, and most of its 10.4 billion euro recovery and resilience plan over a raft of rule of law violations, including the child protection law. You know, it just amazes me how so many people, so many countries, I mean, here we have Britain, who the majority of the country actually did not want to leave the EU. They were just being dummies, and they fell for the propaganda that the far right in Britain gave them to, so they voted to leave the EU. Why the hell does Hungary and Bulgaria not just do the same thing? Just leave the EU if you decided that you just don't want to follow their laws. You don't want to acknowledge that the EU is, that you're part of the EU. Fine, then leave. I just don't see why they're staying. The European Commission has refused to comment until the bill becomes legislation, but a spokesperson said last week that the executive remains steadfast in its commitment to tackling discrimination, inequalities, and challenges faced by LGBTQ plus individuals. All right. We have a clear stance on non-discrimination, and we stand up for a union where you could be who you are, the spokesperson added. As one should. You don't like the LGBT plus community? Fine. Don't like them. But don't force others who either are allies or are part of the community to cease to exist. Don't try to force them back into the closet or hope that they die or whatever it is that you're hoping with this law, because that's just not going to happen. There's always going to be members of the LGBTQ plus community. Why? Because it has absolutely nothing to do with freaking ideology. Bulgaria has been plunged into political paralysis since June's inconclusive elections, with President Radev last week selecting Gorica Grantarova Kozhareva to form a caretaker government. There are concerns the anti-LGBTQ plus law has been weaponized as an electoral tool as the country prepares for yet another snap parliamentary election in October, the 7th poll in just over 3 years. I mean, it's possible that the country is so bigoted that, that they're like, well, let's pass this law so people will like us more. Or it could bite them in the ass. I don't know about the general sentiment in Bulgaria about the LGBT plus community, so I really don't know if it's a gamble worth going with or not. Any reprisals from Brussels for the law would strain its relations with Sofia and further derail its drawn-out bid to join the Eurozone. Okay. The country previously scrapped a January 2024 target to formally join the bloc's currency. So, we have the EU, and then we have countries that are part of the Eurozone, which actually has the euro as their currency. Currently, Bulgaria is part of the EU, but they still use their currency. I think it's the drachma. I'm gonna have to look that up. Alright. Oh no, it's the lev. Alright. Never heard of that. Cool. Alright. Let's see here. Bonnie told Euronews that rights groups would also seek the freezing of EU funds to Bulgaria in the fields of education and culture, including Erasmus Plus funds. And no, I have no idea what fund that is. The European Commission of Education and Culture, Ileana Ivanova, herself hails from Bulgaria and the GERB party, whose lawmakers overwhelmingly supported the bill. Okay, so let me just see about the GERB party. I said, all right. So it's a conservative populist political party. Okay, that tracks. So that is all I have for this article. And all I can say is I hope the EU wins this. And at the same time, I'm like, well, like I said, why are they even in the EU if their values and the country's values, not just the leadership, but the country's values, if they're so diametrically opposed to the EU, number one, how the hell did they become a member? And number two, why are you staying? I mean, Britain left because they managed to convince a bunch of their constituents that, they snowed them into thinking that it's a good idea because it'll save money and, we're xenophobic, which most of Britain actually is not. But they convinced them that, that it'll help with the NHS, that it will do a lot of things that it didn't actually do. So, but here we have countries like Bulgaria where their values are diametrically opposed to the EU. So how the hell did they even get into the EU? Hell, how in the hell did they want to become part of the EU if they're that diametrically opposed to the EU? So anyway, hopefully the EU manages to get this law overturned. And I don't know, perhaps consider a campaign of explaining, the truth about how sexuality works, which is not, oh, I see two gay people, so I'm going to be gay. Because that's not how sexuality works. You did not become heterosexual because that's all you saw around you. I already explained. That's all I saw around me when I was growing up. I'm still asexual. So obviously that is not a thing. So hopefully they can put out a campaign to make sure that the average Bulgarian understands that this isn't a thing. And maybe vote out the asses who seem to think that attacking a group of people they don't like is not the best plan. So anyway, with that, I believe I've said everything I want to in this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.